Look, it's a website. Thank you all for hanging out. Today is a Saturday. I don't usually stream on Saturdays, but have a little window here of time. I've been wanting to try streaming a different game, streaming on the weekend, and trying the digital KeyForge. So we're going to get a 3-for-1 here on this. And I figure a lot of you have not played KeyForge before. I explained the game a little bit at one point on stream, but wasn't about to go in and play it. So I'm going to recap quickly, or not quickly, I'll take whatever time we need here to explain this game. Although I do need to pop out chat. I don't have chat popped out. I did update the Nightbot settings, so subscribers should have pretty free reign to post links, use caps, use emotes, all that stuff. So knocked that thing off the list anyway. So let's do a little Crucible, or this is a Crucible Online. This is where you can play KeyForge. You can each KeyForge. So let's do overview of KeyForge. KeyForge is Richard Garfield's unique trading deck game, you might say. It's every deck is unique, and you identify it because they have this procedurally generated name. They're all pretty ridiculous. Like, you can look at the names of my decks: Plats of Conisuggle, Mother W. Floppity, the Musical Empress. Sometimes you get, oh, that's a Smith Ishikawa. Anyway, they all have all these weird names, but the physical decks themselves each have the name of the deck on them. So literally every card in the game is unique. Every card in the game is unique because it has the unique identifier of the deck name on it, and therefore every deck is unique. And the goal in KeyForge, there's a lot of mechanics that will feel very similar to Magic, but the goal in KeyForge is not to defeat your opponent through damaging them. You are trying to be the first player to forge 3 keys, and you do that by acquiring amber. And if you start your turn with 6 amber, you automatically forge a key. You don't have a choice about it. It's just something you do. And the price of forging a key can change, but at a baseline, you can think of the goal of KeyForge is to be the first player to generate 18 amber. And that's what the race is about. And it has a lot of Magic-like cards in terms of creatures. There are artifacts. They don't call them auras, but they're effectively auras. And there are sorceries, basically. Those are the effective spell types in the game. And the way it works is each deck has 3 factions, 3 houses, they call them. There are 7 total houses. So this deck, which is the Smith Ishikawa deck, has the houses Dis, Sanctum, and Logos. And each of them have exactly 12 cards. So your deck is always 36 cards, and it is always 12 each of 3 different houses. And then you draw a hand of 6. The player who goes first draws a hand of 7 and only plays 1 card. But on a typical turn, there's no mana. Let's look at a card here. Let's do a breakdown of here's an action, which is kind of what I was talking about as a sorcery. So this one says Poltergeist, action, play, use an artifact controlled by any player as if it were yours, destroy that artifact. And note the yellow rock symbol in the upper left corner. Whenever a card has a symbol like that in the upper left corner, it means just the act of playing the card gets you an amber. So in effect, this spell is gain 1 amber and do the play ability. So even if your opponent had no artifacts at all, you could play this card just to get +1 amber. Oh, the alien the Mars faction is one of the factions. That's what the alien head is. And so that's how actions work. And let's find a creature. So here's a creature. It's a toxin, and the number on the left is effectively its power, but you can think of it as its power and its toughness. In this game, damage is permanent. It's persistent. So unlike Magic, where creatures heal at the end of the turn, you put counters on creatures in KeyForge, and when they hit 0 toughness, effectively they die. So effectively, this is a 3/3, but if it took a damage, it would effectively become a 3/2. And it has this ability, Reap. Your opponent discards a random card from their hand. So Reap, this is a good time as any to introduce the concept of Reap, because it's very core to the game. Every single creature in the game has the ability to reap. And reap means exhaust it, tap it, use it, whatever, I think it's exhaust in this game. Add 1 amber. So basically, instead of like attacking your opponent, if your creatures don't have anything they want to do in terms of attacking other creatures, and we'll get to creature combat later, you can basically tap it to add 1 amber. So this inherent ability that all creatures have to add amber is important. So when you see reap : whatever, it doesn't mean that unlike Magic, where the colon means cost payment, cost : effect, this isn't that structure. Reap just here means when this creature reaps, do this thing, right? So whenever this creature reaps, your opponent discards a random card from their hand. And there might be an aura that says reap : your opponent, whatever, you draw a card. Let's say there was an aura that said reap, you draw a card. If you put that aura on that enhancement on this toxin and reaped, you would both cause them to discard and draw a card. So unlike Magic, where you feel like, oh, you have to choose which one of these you get, when you have a thing in KeyForge, if it has a bunch of stuff on it that triggers on reap, they all trigger. So you get it all. Exhaust and ready versus tap and untap. Yeah. So creature combat. Let's save that. Let's talk about how you play your stuff, since there's no mana cost. You have your 6 cards. Well, then what do how do you play? This is I think a very clever replacement, a clever constraint on your resources that causes some interesting decisions in this game. At the start of each of your turns, you name which house you are going to play that turn. And when you name the house, it means you can only play cards from your hand of that house, and you can only use creatures and things on the battlefield of that house. So you might spend your first turn dumping a whole bunch of creatures out onto the battlefield, but if you don't choose that house on your second turn, you can't use any of them. But you get to, and everything enters the play exhausted, tapped, and you actually untap at the end of your turn. That's just a way to handle kind of summoning sickness in a clever way. There's also, and we'll get into certain the keywords kind of the game as we run into them. But that's the fundamental throttle on the ability for you to just dump your hand. And the interesting thing there is, of course, like, you got 6 cards and 3 evenly split houses. So you might just get a 2/2/2, but if on your first turn you got a 4/1/1, like you got 4 cards from Dis and 1 from Sanctum and 1 from Logos, well, you'd probably play Dis. And one important thing, sometimes, like this one, right? A lot of times you're playing cards that don't have any actual impact on the board, but you still play them, or you can also discard freely cards from the house that you named. So, and why would you do that? Because the card draw rules of this game are not draw 1 at the beginning of your turn like Magic. It's draw up to 6 at the end of your turn. So draw up to 6 at the end of your turn changes a lot about what's valuable in this game, because card draw during your turn is not that big a deal unless you draw a card of a house you can play. Because if I draw a card in the middle of my turn and don't play it, well, I was going to draw up to 6 at the end of my turn anyway, so effectively I haven't done anything. So it's a really weird mental shift to, as a Magic player, understand that card drawing is different, has a different power level in this game because of the draw up to hand size at end of turn. So then, finally, we have creature combat. So let's find a creature here. You can attack. It's Hearthstone-style combat, basically. You can send any of your creatures from the house that you named that are ready, untapped, and attack, fight an opposing creature. And they trade damage. You can see a shield on this one. There's a 6, and then on the far right of the card, there's a shield, a gray shield, that has nothing in it. That's because this creature doesn't have any shielding. That shield can contain a number, and if it does, it just means each turn that shield prevents that much damage before it starts damaging the creature, and that's just on a per turn level. So basically, that's the toughness that heals Magic style. And so then, if the creature is whatever's remaining remains, and if the creature you attacked with has a fight ability, it only triggers if the creature survives the combat. So that's another different thing that we'll get into that'll be more clear once we start playing here. I don't want to spend too much longer on the setup because, I mean, that's basically it. So your choke point is your house choice. You can use, cast, and whatever cards from the house you've chosen. Creature combat is direct attack other creatures, Hearthstone style, and every creature can tap to add an amber. And if you start your turn with 6 amber, you forge a key, and the player that forges 3 keys first wins.